Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great session for SelfPubCon. Hope you're all enjoying the conference. Just wanted to explain the video that's coming up now, a little bit different to the standalone sessions that typify the conference sessions. This one that we're going to do here is actually kicking off a 6-month experiment, a little bit like the Indie Author Rights experiment that we did between the last two SelfPubCons. This time we're working with a company called Prestazon, and they are a company that tries to make managing your Amazon ads a more straightforward and more lucrative and a more enjoyable experience. We know that a lot of you are interested in Amazon advertising, and there are lots of third-party tools to help people cope with Amazon ads because the interface itself can be a little bit overwhelming if you're not the data type, and I'm not. So what we are going to do is work with Prestazon over the next 6 months. We're going to take 3 titles and go through from a kind of, with a budget across a 6-month experiment to see how it compares with actually doing Amazon ads directly. So I'm talking to Ariel of Prestazon. She's the books specialist there, and she is going to do an introduction to the platform today. And then over the next 6 months, she and I will do a monthly meeting where we'll analyze what's going on. I'll compare it to what I know of Amazon ads behavior. And then at the end of 6 months, we can see whether it is worth while for authors to hire a third party, a third party company to help with this, because obviously there's a cost involved. And on top of your budget for the ads, you also have to budget for the tool, and so yeah, is it worth it? This is a question that we're going into this experiment to find out. So over to Ariel, and she's going to introduce first of all Amazon ads and some of the vocabulary and things that people are talking about when they're talking about ads, and then introduce us to Prestazon. Yeah, so that was what interested me, because I am, as I said, today I am Orna Ross author rather than Orna Ross director of Ally, because we're going to look at setting up accounts and everything, and you're going to take me through it right from the beginning, because none of this stuff comes easily to me. I know we have some amazing people in the indie author community who are really on top of the ads and the data, and they love all that, and they're really kind of naturally good at it. And then we have a whole chunk of the author community that's like me, who finds it all very difficult, and just the brain doesn't necessarily easily go that way. And to be honest, that was why I was really kind of interested in what you're doing and how you're doing it, was because it was more comprehensible to me. I didn't find the sort of the brain fuzz kicking in quite the same way that it normally does. So I think I'm interested both, as an author myself, in seeing if this kind of resistance or hurdle or challenge, whatever we want to talk about, can be overcome by a brain like mine. But obviously also I, as director of Ally, feel kind of a responsibility to know more about Amazon advertising and all the things that are becoming much more commonplace in the author community these days. I mean, you hear some people saying actually you can't now make an income as an indie author unless you're investing in advertising. I'm not sure I'd go that far, because Amazon has never been a major platform for me, and advertising has never been a major focus for me. So I'm interested anyway to learn more. So yeah, where shall we start?
Well, I think you touched on something really interesting there. And I think it's something I hear a lot from authors, is Amazon ads can be complicated. And if you're just getting started, you think, oh, like I was really focused on writing this book and getting this book published. And it seems like this, this mountain trek that you need to climb, and then you finally get there and you put your flag in and you're like, I've published this book, and then you have to think about advertising it. And especially for authors who are using Kindle Direct Publishing or Kindle Unlimited, you need to really advertise your book through that platform. And you kind of need to understand a lot of concepts that you probably haven't encountered before. And one thing I will say is that Amazon has got a learning console, which is basically like a online university where you can learn about different aspects of Amazon advertising. And I really encourage everybody to go and take those courses because they're free. And although, I mean, a lot of people are probably like their eyes glazed over by the amount of like online learning and online classes and stuff that they've been doing through lockdown, I really think it's worth investing your time in it. And myself and my other members of the Success team are all Amazon Ads accredited. So you know that we have gone through the learning console ourselves and we got out on the other side, and it is possible. You don't need to be ads accredited in order to create ads as an author. But I think it's really helpful to know like what the acronyms mean, what an auto campaign versus a manual campaign is, how the bidding works, how your ads show up, and what the algorithm bases its relevancy off of, and stuff like that. So I think when you're getting started, it's worth kind of taking up that free resource and kind of teaching yourself a bit more about the Amazon ads.
Absolutely. And I think their resources are fantastic and they're improving all the time. And we, just to say that also at Ally, we had recently had an interview with one of the Amazon advertising execs who answered our member questions, and we'll put the link to both the university and that introductory session that we did with them in the post for Self PubCon today as well, so people can click over and take a look and see what all that's about. Now let's talk about Prestazon and what it can do for everybody.
So Prestazon is considered a third-party integrator. So we basically plug into the Amazon Ads API, and all you need to know about an API is that it's a data connection. And Prestazon is able to gather the data from your Amazon account and basically display it in Prestazon for you to work with and manipulate and stuff like that. There are limitations to what data we get from Prestazon. As of this moment, we don't yet have page reads data, for instance, but they are going to release that metric to us over the API, and I know that they're working on it, and they know how much we want it and how much our authors want it. But it's just to give you an example that we're pulling the data from your Amazon ads account through the API, and there are other third-party integrators out there, and in a perfect world, you know, they make managing your Amazon PPC pay-per-click ads easier. Prestazon, for example, gives you the opportunity to automate your Amazon PPC, and that's why a lot of people are interested in Prestazon at first, because they think, ooh, I can just automate everything. We do automate bids, and we can also automate keyword rules. And we also offer some inbuilt strategies, like I mentioned before, if you're just getting started. Some third-party integrators can get overly complicated, and you don't want a situation where an algorithm is making decisions that you don't understand about how you spend your money. You don't want to get into that hole, and that's where automation for automation's sake doesn't work.
And I have to because I would say that's what we liked about Prestazon, was that, you know, sometimes the third-party integration is even more complex than the problem they're trying to solve. And what we loved was that it made things simpler, and it's easier visually to look at, and it's also just, it's a simplifying tool. But you mentioned something there that I think is really important to emphasize, which is that it doesn't automate everything. This isn't about, okay, here, nice machine, take my problem and solve it for me. The author still needs to be very connected. And that if you're thinking of going down the advertising route, you have to, especially at the beginning, dedicate time and focus to it. And Press Design doesn't get rid of the need to do that, right?
Yeah, and you totally hit the nail on the head there, because Press Design was created originally by our co-founders as a tool for them to simplify selling on Amazon. So it was created to work in tandem with an account manager. And we really emphasize that we don't think any amount of automation can make up for a human touch when it comes to your account, because the algorithm might think A, but you might think B. So for example, you could see, and we will get into this in a bit more detail, but you could see that an order has come in through a certain author, but you could say, actually, my book is not relevant at all to this author. I enjoy their books, but they're just not at all in my genre. And you might think, I don't really want to spend money on a keyword that I don't think is relevant to me. So you can just make the decision to negate it. Our algorithm thinks, hey, you've had an order, this is a good keyword. But that's where an account manager can say, no, actually, this isn't right for me. And that there are situations like that where you are in control of Press Design. You don't have to, even if you have bid automation, you can still make changes to your bids. We're there to work in tandem with you and with your decisions and with your strategies. And another thing to point out is PPC integrators, third-party integrators, they cost money. And if you aren't at a certain spend threshold, if you're at, only at the beginning of your journey, an integrator can be overkill. I don't think Press Design is for everybody. A good benchmark is that you're spending at or about £500, $500 per month on your ads. Before then, I would say, look at the Learning Console, read up. Mark Dawson has an amazing course that really goes into Amazon ads. Educate yourself and kind of test things out. There are some great books out there as well. And then when you think you're ready, then you can consider going with a third-party integrator. We're going to be releasing a blog post soon about, am I ready for a automation tool?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point that you're emphasizing. And also, I think having one book, being just a one book author, it's unlikely to be the right thing for you at that point. I would say have at least 3 books. Would you agree with that in your armory?
I wouldn't put a number on it, because we have some authors who are just using a lot of spend on 1 book or 2 books or 3 books. And we have other authors who have 10 book series and they only advertise the first book. Like, I could really go on and on about like the different strategies. I really wouldn't put a number on it when it comes to the amount of books, because I don't think I have enough data there. But I do know that you want to understand the cost benefit of an integration tool and whether it's worth it based on the budgets in your account.
And generally speaking, the return on one book, unless it's an exceptional, generally speaking, I think there's a kind of a read through for series writers. These are the people that we tend to see getting the best return on ads, is when your return comes in on more than one book. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is our kind of general impression, that it's hard for the author to come out with a good ROI, having paid for the ads and paid for the third party, that there's not a lot of money left.
What I can say is that a lot of the anecdotal evidence that I've seen is heavily skewed towards fiction authors and fiction series authors. I know of a few books off the top of my head. Denis Karen just published a book called Catch the Unicorn. And his advice is for fiction authors who write series, for instance. And I know a lot of other authors, Mark Dawson, for instance, also kind of operate on that model. I wish I had enough data so I could say one way definitively or the other. I just don't think I have enough to say right now, this is the way to do it. But I can hand on heart say it is the biggest kind of community that I've interacted with who are really in touch with ads.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of groupthink of fiction series authors is formidable, especially on Facebook. And everything I've seen suggests that having a series is better for return on investment. I won't say one strategy is better than the other when it comes to advertising first or advertising all of them, but I think there's certainly a sunk cost when you buy the first book in a series. You want to read the others. Like, I'm a BookBub fan, and if I get hooked on something, I'm like, oh my God, I need to read all of them. And I read them in 2-3 days or whatever it is. There's definitely a way to build your audience that way that makes financial sense.
Okay, and just before we get off these general principles and into more of the nitty gritty, I think, we're raising something very important here, which I witness in the indie author community, which is that if something works for an author or a group of authors, it becomes then, as you say, anecdotally very strong and goes out into the community, and people can think, the question that I just asked you there, we can think that is the only way. And I'm glad you keep emphasizing that you don't have the data to be sure of that, because I have certainly seen, I see over and again authors doing things that are very different to what is the accepted way and doing extremely well in all sorts of other ways. There are indie authors who do extremely well who aren't even on Amazon, so which kind of goes against what everybody thinks. And just because there is, Amazon's an incredible and fantastic tool for indie authors, but it doesn't mean there is no single way. And so yeah, approaching then your advertising, still wearing your creative hat, still testing and exploring and experimenting is the way to go. And to explain to people, we're involved in a longer experiment than just, having a chat today. Today will be the foundation. You're going to explain a whole load of stuff to me. Then we're going to take 3 books, a non-fiction book, because I write non-fiction, fiction, and poetry. And we're going to take those 3 books and we're going to take them across 6 months, because that gives us time. We can't do anything meaningful, obviously, in a few hours. And then at the next Self-Pub-Con, we're going to come back and we're going to actually look at what happened across that 6 months. And hopefully then we will be able to, on 3 very different books, get some sort of ideas and things that will be interesting to people.
Yeah, definitely. I think you made a really good point there. And it's also why I think this experiment is going to be super interesting. Like, different strategies work for different authors. Like, there's certainly a lot of fiction authors in our community, but I also have had conversations with an author. He publishes romance and kind of children's legend fiction books and also coloring books. So I kind of went into the call and had, 3 different strategies to suggest. So when we are looking at, the fiction book, the nonfiction, and the poetry, it's going to be super interesting, especially in one account, to see how they vary. And I think it's going to be a really great experiment, and I'm super happy to be working with you on it.
Great. Okay, let's do it then. So where do we start?
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. I have requested requested permission from you to share my screen.
Oh yes, we're recording on me. Sorry, yes. I didn't Zoom did
No
this
worries.
recently, didn't they, where you can't just automatically do it anymore. Is that good for you now?
Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Just have to hit share. Super. So now we are in, I suppose I could leave this here. We are in Press Design, and we are in a staging account. So we're not going to look at Orna's account just yet because I
Not
just
my
want
account. I'm not spending 11 grand just yet.
I just want to take everybody through some concepts that we're going to be talking about today. And it's just easier to do it with our staging data here. So right now, this is kind of like home base and Press Design. It's your charts. You can configure these charts. And we're not going to be looking at these today. But right now, I want to look at one of our explorers. So you've got the Campaign Explorer. You've also got Ad Group, Keyword, Search Term, and ASINs. We're going to primarily be looking at Keyword and Search Term Explorers today. So
I'm just going to stop you for people who are coming in for the very first time. In terms of Press Design and Amazon, when we talk about keywords, can you just explain that that doesn't always necessarily mean a word? And, you know, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about keywords?
Sure. So our search terms are our touch point with the customer, or in this case, reader. It's what the user typed into the search bar, and keywords are what you use to bid on and capture the traffic of those search terms. So I'm going to show you examples here of search terms versus keywords, but basically, if you just think of keywords as this is what you are bidding on in order to get your ad shown. So you, Orna, are coming up with a list of keywords that you want to bid on in order to capture certain searches done by your potential customers or hopefully customers. And that's what we are looking at today. I'm going to explain a bit about how we get that one-to-one relationship between the search terms and the keywords that you bid on. Ultimately, that's what we want, and we call this search term isolation. But if I can just give you an example of a search term and a keyword. Let's say a user types in Irish wartime romance, and you, Orna, want to capture that. So you're creating an exact match keywords for Irish wartime romance to capture the audience, because you know that that search term is relevant to your book and will be relevant to the ad that you want shown. And this will likely have a higher conversion rate because of its specificity. So does that make sense?
Yes, got it. Okay, that's great.
Awesome. Okay, so right now we're here in the Search Term Explorer, and you can see we have a number of metrics here. I'm just going to point out a few. So you've got spend and sales. Automatically, we sort by spend. So your highest spend search term will always be at the top, but you can, with the arrows, you can kind of configure this. I like to configure by orders. So I'll just hit this top button and it will show me what has had the most orders. You also have, for example, ACoS, which is advertising cost of spend. And you can see, which is great news, you've got a 15% ACoS for this search term Magic Wand. And we only spent $273 on it to get over $1,800 of sales. And essentially, your advertising cost of spend means how much money, what percentage of profit have you made after you've spent on ads, essentially. So these search terms are basically what was typed into the search bar in Amazon when the ad was shown and when hopefully the order was made. Something that is really cool in Press Design is that you can also filter. You can break down and expand the keywords for your search term. So you can see that although Magic Wand, the search term, has a 15% ACOS, we actually have a lot of keywords firing on that one search term. But what we really want is something more like Magician's Hat. So Magician's Hat, we've got one search term and we've got one keyword. So we know when we make any changes to the bid, it is actually going to impact the performance of that search term, rather than if we change bid on Magic Wands, which Magic Wand do we want to impact? Which one do we want to affect? So this basically means that you're kind of stealing impressions from yourself, because you have all of these campaigns with the same keyword showing up again and again. And this actually we see a lot in author accounts. They're not search term isolated, and they have a lot of broad match keywords, and they're just hoping that kind of something sticks. But hopefully what our keyword rules will do is allow you to become search term isolated. And I'm going to kind of visually show some examples about that. But
because that's really important, isn't it, in terms of making sure that your performance gets better, that you're not just kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, so like the keyword rules allow you more control on your account. And that can be everything from promoting good search terms into exact match keywords, or also negating search terms which absolutely are not working for you. I actually would like to take some time to go on a tiny rant, if you'll allow me. So, and this is my personal opinion. I will kind of add the headline here, my personal opinion. And I have formed this opinion through anecdotal evidence of author accounts, but a lot of authors, they don't have a huge budget, and they may go to the limit of 1,000 keywords per campaign. But I think that you really want to pay attention to the quality of your keywords and to the relevancy of your keywords. A lot of the time I see free Kindle books, free ebooks romance, free ebooks history, or Kindle Unlimited books. Now, although if you bid on that keyword, you might get an order, you might get two, let's say. I would say it's likely that you might not see any orders. There may be a high amount of impressions for that keyword, but you're going to spend a lot of money, and you probably are not going to get a return on that investment, because a lot of people are searching for free Kindle books or free ebook romance or whatever. But there is so much choice when it comes to that, and so many people bidding on that, that you're just in this huge, you're just a tiny fish in a very big pond. So when it comes to good keywords that you want to bid on, you want to think of relevancy, and you want to think, what is my budget? Like, how much money have I got to spend here? Do I want to spend a teeny tiny amount across 500, 1,000 keywords, or do I want to kind of build a list of, let's say, 50 to 100 that I'm really, really confident in? So it is completely up to you. Like, some authors want to do a lot of research, so they want to use a lot of keywords, and others need to be a bit spendthrift, so they need to think about which ones are going to work for me. And the thing is, your auto campaign, Amazon's algorithm, is pretty good at finding search terms that are gonna work well for you. It's within their interest for the algorithm to work, for your ad to show, for people to buy your book, for you to spend money on ads. So just something to keep in mind there.
Okay, great.
Now,
and clearly also you don't learn anything from Kindle ebooks as a search term. It doesn't kind of grow your knowledge about your book, what your readers are actually searching for, because I would see that this as part of Sometimes we think about our marketing, our metadata and everything over here, and then our ads are over here, but surely bringing those together as much as possible so that we get a very clear idea of where our book fits in the marketplace and what its value is. Advertising can really help us to grow our knowledge of what our readers are actually looking for, as opposed to what we maybe think they might be looking for.
Yeah. So that being said, we are over here in the campaign manager now. We, prior to this recording, set up a couple of one-click campaigns, so 150 self-publishing questions, and also allowing now. So this is your nonfiction book, and this is your poetry book. And we're going to take a look into the rules afterwards. But I just wanted to open the one-click campaign setup and just talk a little bit more in detail about keyword rules and keyword match types. And for that, I'm going to turn your attention over here. So there are positive and negative keywords. You can have broad match, phrase match, and exact match. And what these allow you to do is control which search terms lead to your ad showing. And Press-Is-On's rules allow you to make thresholds on when to create a new keyword and what type of keyword to make. So what we're doing here is we're going to basically add a book. We're going to seed some keywords. We're going to set our budget. And we're also here on the right-hand side, you're going to see the structure preview update as we add in data, but I'm not going to touch these rules because they're already set up for you. This one-click campaign structure is set up to get you search term isolated. So the idea is that we'll create a funnel, and you will get your orders in the auto campaign using the power of Amazon's algorithm. They're going to show your ad where they think it's relevant. And then if you get an order, that will trigger the keyword rules. So let's say you got an order on the search term Irish wartime romance. That would then be created as a negative phrase in the auto group because we don't want that in the auto anymore. We would create it as a broad match keyword in the research group because we want to look for good search terms around the one that got you the order. We're going to create a negative exact keyword in that research group as well, because again, we're trying to keep you isolated. And then the exact search term that got you the order, Irish wartime romance, we're going to create an exact match keyword for it. So the idea is that you're controlling the spend, you're controlling the bid on a keyword and a search term in that one-to-one relationship, just like we saw earlier with Magician's Hat. So now we are going to go through this little setup. For Orna, this is going to be old news. For some people, you'll be seeing it for the first time, but we are going to create, of course, my caps lock is not working. We're going to create a campaign for After the Rising. So we're going to add in our ASIN. So it does say SKU, but really it should be ASIN when it comes to our ebooks. And we, ahead of this call, has a list put together of our seed research keywords, and I'm going to paste them here. You want each of your keywords to have its own line, and you don't have to add any performance keywords when you're creating this one-click setup if you don't want to. You don't even need to create any research keywords. It just kind of kickstarts things. Here on the right-hand side, you can see the structure preview has updated. So we can see that we're actually creating 3 campaigns: the auto, the research, and the performance. We have one product in each of them, which is our After the Rising book. And then you can see in the research campaign, we've got 7 broad match keywords. And if I were to add some performance ones, then you would see in the performance campaign, so I can show you, I'll just write good. It shows that we have 1 exact match keyword. When you're creating research keywords, you're basically saying, I think these keywords will work for me. I'm not 100% sure, but I want to test them out. When you're adding performance keywords, you're saying these definitely work for me. I know that I'm going to get orders, or I've gotten past orders with these keywords. So some people like to put in their author name or their series name into the performance keyword box. Others like to put in complementary authors. So similar authors in their genre, it's up to you. Other people like to create separate product targeting campaigns, which we'll get to in a follow-up session. We won't cover it today, but that is what you could use your performance keywords for, should you choose. So now we're going to set our budgets and targets, and maybe I can kind of let Orna kind of talk about how we arrived at our decision for our budget, and we can also talk about some things around bids and budgets.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really was guided by you because I didn't have a clue what sort of budget should be there. And as I said, this is an experiment, and it's a bit of a long-term experiment. And there was no point in us doing this experiment and not, you know, allowing budget to come between us and the success of the experiment. So in order for it to kind of to work, to be given a chance to work well, optimally, you figured that about 500 a month was the optimal amount to start with, and then go from there, because we wouldn't get enough data otherwise if the budget was lower, right?
Well, it's not that you wouldn't get enough data, because there are some instances in which a lower budget can gather a good amount of data. But when it comes to using a PPC tool and using Press Design, I mean, if you're spending £100 a month on ads, and you want, let's say, our core subscription, which is $50 a month, just the math there, that just doesn't add up. And with £100, you might not get enough data, and you also might not get enough value out of Press Design. The more data you give Press Design, the more it gives back to you. So we see that the £500, $500 range is really kind of the sweet spot for starting off with your PPC tool. If you're at 450, 400, I'm not saying that Press Design won't work for you, but you will need to make sure that you're managing your bids and that you are kind of getting that data in. Amazon, at the end of the day, is controlling your ads showing, and the users are clicking and ordering, and you don't have any control over that. So there's only so much that we can do without sufficient data. So that bearing in mind, we have chosen to have our auto campaign have a budget of £30, and the research and performance campaigns to have budgets of £10. That's because we really want the auto campaign to deliver while we're in this data gathering phase. Ultimately, the life cycle of the budgets for these campaigns is that you want slightly more in your auto to begin with. And then once the auto has become depleted, where it's not delivering for you anymore, you can lower the budget on your auto and also lower your max bid. And then you can siphon that budget into your research and performance, and then eventually pretty much almost exclusively in the performance. We're not saying to turn off the auto or the research, because if you really lower that max bid and you get a cheap click here or there and it results in an order, like, why are you going to say no to that? So it's good to kind of keep those open just in case.
And can you
Um,
explain the £30? £30 per week, £30 per what? £30 per click?
this is this no this is a daily budget. So across all three, this is going to be a £50 daily budget, but you'll see individually each campaign. So auto will have 30, research will have 10, and performance will have 10. And just because you set your budget at a certain amount doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit that budget daily. And one thing to point out with your auto budget is that with the auto campaigns, you actually have 4 different types of targeting. You have complements, substitutes, loose match, and close match. And in Amazon, you can't do this in Prestazon. In Amazon, you can actually control the max bids for all 4 of those targeting types. So you could see, for instance, that your close match targeting in your auto campaign is doing really, really well. And you might say, let's see if I up the budget like 1 or 2 cents, like what happens? Or you could say that my substitutes is doing absolutely dire. I'm getting no impressions through it. You think, oh, I'm going to increase the budget there. Or you could say, wow, I'm really spending through this auto budget and I need to lower it down. You can go in and lower those targets individually. So like I said, you can't do that in Prestazon. You can only do that in the advertising console. But it's just something to keep in mind, that you have a bit more granular control when it comes to the auto budgets than the research and performance, those being manual campaigns.
And when, just as you've raised that, if I'm using Prestazon, there's nothing to stop me hopping into Amazon and having a look at their stuff too. I mean, presumably by using yours, you get to understand theirs better, and it doesn't, because you're using Prestazon, in other words, it doesn't stop you also engaging with your
No.
account directly. Just want to make that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like, we are definitely to be used in tandem with your advertising account in Amazon, especially because there are certain things you can only do in Amazon. So like I said at the top of our conversation, we only get a certain amount of data, for instance. So if you want to see your page reads data, you need to go in Amazon to do that. If you want to pause a campaign, you need to go in Amazon to do that. But you can change bids in Prestazon, just not the auto targeting bids. So those individual ones. So there are certain things that you need to go into Amazon for. And then we hope that with Prestazon, you can just make generally your life easier, so you can spend less time on your ads and more time on your writing. So with that transition, right now we're about to do our default bid and also our ACoS target. So again, our ACoS target is our advertising cost of spend. And the reason the ACoS target is particularly important when it comes to Prestazon is our bid algorithm will use your ACoS target when it comes to the bid suggestion. So we are going to try and optimize your account to hit that ACoS target. So I've seen like a lot of people kind of just come in here and they don't really pay attention and they just leave it at 30%. But our 30%, it's just a default. We're not saying that everybody needs to do that, particularly when it comes to authors. I very rarely see anybody with an ACoS target that low. And that's because you have a whole different stream of revenue when it comes to like Kindle Unlimited and page reads and stuff like that. The ACoS target is only going to be based on your ad spend and your sales through your sponsored products campaigns, for instance. So it's not going to show you your revenue from your page reads. So when it comes to your ACoS target, I like to say that look at your account as a whole and see, and this is again, if you're not just getting started, see what your average ACoS is across your account and maybe set it for 10 to 20% lower than that. So if your average is 200%, maybe set it to 180, because that's going to basically suggest bids that aren't going to be too drastic. Whereas if you're at 200% and you try to set your ACoS target for 30%, you can see how very quickly you might be spending more or the bid suggestions might be more than you're ready to do. So you want to basically optimize your account in small increments, in small sprints, rather than in a marathon, if that makes sense.
Totally. Okay.
Okay. And so when it comes to our ACOS target, we spoke about this before, but because we don't have a huge amount of data, we're going to just start off with 150%. And then in a month's time, we're going to take a look at how your account is doing, how your campaigns are doing, and then we'll adjust based on that. And default bids, I believe we landed at 65 pence. And this is, completely individual. Some people like to start it off at 10 cents and go from there, because we kind of want to kind of kickstart the data process. We're having just a slightly higher bid than maybe some authors would start off with, just because we want to see and test at that level. It's a good middle of the road between 10 and a pound, and we'll see where we go from there. Underneath it, you have these sliders. You can either automate your bids or automate your keyword rules. When you're just getting started, we like to say leave the automation off, and you can look at your suggestions tab. In the suggestions tab, it will show you what we think your bids should be based on the data. So based on, let's say, a certain keyword doesn't get many clicks, we might suggest increasing the bid by 2 pence to get more exposure. Or if we're kind of increasing the bid for a while, we could say we're going to ratchet it back down because we haven't seen much performance. And when you're looking at those suggestions, I feel like you get to learn Prestazon a bit more, and you get to understand why we want to suggest certain things. And when it comes to automating the keyword rules, although again, a lot of people look at Prestazon and just automatically want to turn on the automation for everything, I also think it's a worthwhile exercise to see the keyword rules in action. So we're going to leave these turned off for now. And without further ado, we're going to create our structure. I think something that's worth discussing, Orna, is like budget and bid pitfalls to avoid. I know we were speaking about how we arrived at that £500 monthly budget, but it's important to note that we're not saying that you can't have success with your ads unless you spend that amount. It's incredibly individual. And if it's stressing you out and you're awake at night thinking, oh my God, what if my campaign spends its whole daily budget, then I would suggest that it is too high. You definitely want to go at your own pace. You just need to understand that if you're doing a slow burn and you're just spending a very little bit at a time, it's going to take you longer to gather data. If you kind of front load with more spend and higher bids, you're probably going to get a lot more data in a shorter amount of time. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, ignoring your budgets or your bids completely is another pitfall you want to avoid. I don't think that Prestazon or Amazon ads in general should be something you set and forget. I think you want to go into your account. Eventually, hopefully you're going in maybe once or twice a week. At first, you're hoping to kind of get comfortable and go through that teaching process with yourself and kind of learning what's going on. So only by looking and getting familiar with Amazon and with Prestazon and with your data and what's happening and analyzing it, can you really make informed decisions. And I don't think any algorithm, any PPC provider can be as successful as an account manager who knows their account and has tools at their disposal that they know how to use.
Absolutely. And so just to give people a sense, and I know you're going to say it's going to be different for everybody, but just an average idea of how much time, say at the beginning when you're going through the learning process, and then you're saying about twice a week, you know, when you go into Prestazon and Amazon, because you're probably opening the two together and, you know, working on the different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
How much time are we talking here? Are we talking 10 minutes? Are we talking an hour? You know, how long does it take to kind of get on top of things, and then when you're up and running?
Oh, I've run out of water.
Big question.
It's okay. I got this. So when you first get started, and I think when it came to this session in particular, I suggested that intermediate authors, so authors who have done some experimenting with ads before, would benefit more from our conversation. Those kinds of authors are probably already going to have active campaigns. So they will have played around a little bit. They may consider themselves experts, or they may say like, I don't know what I'm doing, or they may be somewhere in the middle. When it comes to Prestazon, I think spending maybe 4 hours in a week reading blog posts, looking at our new user webinar recordings, joining our Facebook group, emailing us in the ticket queue when you're totally lost or you want to know how to do something, you're not quite sure. And you can also, we have a video course as part of Mark Dawson's self-publishing formula. Some authors have found us through that course. That course is like a very in-depth look at Prestazon and ads, and that is also a good resource to look at. I think it is also worth considering, do I need to restructure some of my campaigns? Do I have 100 campaigns? Do I need all of these campaigns? So I think that it's reasonable to have like 4 hours a week and also be doing some setup. So like setting up your one-click campaigns and looking at your data. Now that being said, I think, so we're offering a 30-day trial as part of our self-PubCon offering. And I think no major account decisions should be done either in Amazon or with Prestazon when looking at less than 30 days worth of data. Because for one, you want to have enough of a cushion to see, you know, did this thing that happened where, you know, my sales tanked one day, was that just a one-day spike, or is this something that is occurring on a seasonal basis, or is this something, I changed that bid, so that's why this happened? I think you can only really get perspective when you're looking at a broader scope, which is also why we're doing a longer experiment, the two of us, when looking at your Amazon ads. And I think these things just take time. So although it's a 30-day trial, I'm not going to promise that in 30 days we're going to improve your ACOS by 50% and you're going to sell 500 more books. It's very much a tool where, like, the amount of time you invest in it, hopefully you get back later on, and it's about understanding it. So if you don't understand it and you avoid it, it's not going to help you. So I think, yeah, that initial investment of maybe 4 hours a week for a month or two, and then gradually, I mean, you see in the Facebook group, like, a lot of our authors are super collaborative and really helpful, and they're trying out different strategies, and sometimes questions get answered before we even jump in. I think when you kind of immerse yourself in this world, hopefully it becomes less like work. And eventually the goal, my hope, is that by using Press Design, you're spending less time on your ads, but you understand what's happening so you can make informed decisions. But ultimately, we've given you your time back. So whatever amount of money you've invested in your ads or you've invested in your Press Design subscription is worth it to you, because how much is your time worth? And hopefully you're using that time to write books, or maybe you're like, oh, I'm done, and you move on to something else. But yeah, that is what I hope authors will get out of Press Design.
Okay, fantastic. All right then. So we will convene again in a while, and we will keep on meeting across the time between now and next March, and we will put together then a comprehensive kind of report for everybody so that they can see what worked, what didn't, and general principles that they're going to be able to take away and bring to their own campaigns. And is there anything you'd like to say to finish off this session?
Yeah, the only thing that I'd really like to say is that I hope that even if you're not ready for a PPC tool, that our conversation today has helped you and has hopefully answered some questions, or maybe sparked some new questions that you want to get answered. Ultimately, Amazon ads is really a long, windy road, and it's kind of constantly changing. So although we're preaching search term isolation today, Amazon could change the algorithm, and then we'd all be up in arms. So it's important to know that things fluctuate, but ultimately, whatever you do, I hope that Amazon ads are less mysterious to you now, and I hope that at the end of our journey, Orna will be super confident when it comes to her Amazon apps. And
if I can do it, folks, anyone can.
Yeah.
But it's a big if,
yeah.
Ariel, big if. We have to see.
We'll see. Definitely, we'll see.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your generous freebie for our PubCon people. And I'm quite sure that you're going to have a number of people who are going to take you up on it, because I think just the fact of having a friendly Facebook group to be able to turn to and ask questions, directly, and to look at a tool that kind of demystifies some, if not all, of the big questions, the big Amazon ad questions. I'm quite certain that that's going to appeal to other authors, not just to me. So thank you very much indeed for being part of SelfPubCon, and I'll talk to you soon. And okay, everybody, you've got another session to go to right now. All right then. Happy writing, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.